This woman is on the run from a loan shark. Unable to keep up with a 14 million% interest rate, she now fears for her safety. Tonight, how the loan sharks feed their greed by exploiting and terrorizing the weakest among us.
Mr. Corskell, perhaps you'd like
Sexual television.
to... seriously, that's all.
Glasgow, and time for a night out. The city has more than its fair share of unemployment and poverty. As in many cities outside the prosperous south, the activities of the illegal moneylender, the loan shark, are all too familiar.
Hands up anybody that's in any trouble with the loans. Huh? Coming at your door. Eh? Jaws. Old lady in the moneylender shop. Ask for a loan. Could you give me some money, please? My husband's died. Sadly, we weren't insured, and I need some money to get him put down. She says, do you have your pension book? She says, yes. And do you have your supplementary benefits? She says, yes. Well, that's quite good, because if you can do that, you must be able to pay the payments. But if you don't pay the payments, we'll bring them back up again.
In the land of the loan shark, such sick jokes are often painfully close to the truth. Deserted by her husband, Angela relies on Social Security to bring up her 2 small children. When she desperately needed extra money, she had no choice but to go to an illegal moneylender. Banks and credit companies didn't want to know.
I had a stillborn baby, and I wanted to pay for the funeral. I wanted to do it properly. So the problem was the money. I got told it could cost me up to £150, £200 for a funeral, even for a baby. So I happened to mention to one of my friends that I needed the money, but I wanted to try and get the money. So she says, well, see my sister. My sister does money lending. The only reason I borrowed it was I didn't think Social Security would pay it, with it being a stillbirth, you know. So I had the funeral. The week after the funeral, Social Security sent me a gyro for the complete bill.
So did you try and pay back this loan?
I took the £150 up, but she just wasn't interested unless I had a week's interest on top of it, which was £45. It was £195 altogether. Well, she had my supplementary benefit book, so I had no way of getting the money.
So you were in a trap?
That was me. The following week, the interest would have been doubled. Every single week it's doubled. So there's just no way of getting out.
No chance at all?
No.
Angela is now very frightened indeed and is moving to a safe house we've found for her. Apparently undeterred by criminal charges already laid, the moneylender continues to threaten violence. The interest charged in Angela's case is also frightening. She borrowed £150, paid back £1,300 and still owed the original £150. Had she borrowed from a bank, the weekly interest payments would have been 39p. From a credit company, the weekly interest payments would have been 67p. But because she's not considered creditworthy, Angela ended up paying £45 a week interest. The same comparative repayments, calculated by the Office of Fair Trading as an annual percentage rate, are 14.7% for the bank, 25.9% for the credit company, and an amazing 14 million% for the loan shark.
The moneylender's a wretched and I think quite wicked person who's living off the backs of really abject misery and grinding people who are already at the bottom of the pile further into the ground.
Fear is the loan shark's main weapon. Most witnesses we found were too frightened to face the cameras. Not surprising in Sally's case. The loan shark tried to burn her house down.
I owed £500 and they began to threaten me, and I told them I couldn't pay. Soon after, I was at home with the children when somebody came up the stairs of the flats carrying a can of petrol. There was a loud whoosh as the carpet and door exploded in a sheet of flames. I dived into a bedroom to grab a blanket to put the fire out. It really scared me. I was so frightened I didn't tell the police. Next day I went to see them and I gave them my child benefit book. That's worth £15 a week. They kept that for 2.5 years. In the end, I reckon I paid back over £2,000 and I only borrowed 60.
Typical of this evil breed were the Greenhill brothers, James and Anthony, jailed for 3 years and 9 months respectively earlier this year for extortion and attempting to obtain money with menaces from women. Finding them guilty, the sheriff described their behavior as outrageous, picking as they did on the weakest members of society and charging them exorbitant rates of interest, in their case running to a staggering 11 million%. But while they're safely on the inside here at Barlinnie, there are many more like them still operating on the outside.
This is a loan shark in action on the streets of Glasgow. Paul McCabe is part of a father and son team. Here he takes his interest from yet another victim before moving on to the next.
In this one square, less than a mile from Glasgow city centre, no less than 5 illegal moneylenders, their minders and runners are in open operation. Their customers come here to use the local post office to cash their benefit books and their gyros, then come across the square and repay the interest on their loans, and then, like as not, borrow yet more money.
We're talking about ordinary, decent citizens struggling to make ends meet, people who cannot get a penny worth of credit anywhere, and they are forced into the hands of these people. And of course, that's what makes the position of the loan sharks so wicked, the fact that they realise that that's the situation.
This loan shark is called Robert Kerr. His client peels notes from his social security payment.
Mr. Kerr, my name is Roger Cook from Central Television. I've come to ask you about your activities as an illegal moneylender.
Me?
Yes, we've seen
Not
you.
at all.
We've had you under observation for some
No.
time, and we have film of you
Not
actually
at all.
lending money.
Not at all.
We do.
Good road.
We do.
I don't know nothing about that.
You do. You've been lending money. You're probably going to do it this morning.
Back in Bridgeton Square, Kerr hands out another loan.
How do you defend charging exorbitant rates of interest? You do. We have actually got film of you at work in Bridgeton Square. You have actually...
I don't know nothing about it.
In his hurry to escape, Kerr has forgotten he has an anti-theft switch on the front of his car.
Doing a number of transactions with people, lending them money, taking the money back. You know it's illegal, don't you?
Another deal and another unfortunate victim makes a repayment he can ill afford.
It's against the law to lend money without a license. We know you have none. And we have you on film lending money. What have you got to say to that? Are you saying we're lying? We have you on film. Does the camera lie? Is that where you're off to now? Lend some more money at exorbitant rates of interest?
The law says that anyone lending more than £30 on a regular basis must be licensed as a moneylender under the Consumer Credit Act. In Glasgow, responsibility for making the act work is shared between the police and the council's Consumer Protection Department, which has set up a confidential hotline.
Hello, I'm really frightened. It's about the loan sharks. My son...
The way we're looking at it, we see it's going to get worse. We're hoping that it will become better with the investigations that are going on with it. but since April, the changes in the DHS benefit system, the system is definitely getting worse. They have taken away all the individuals' rights for loans and stuff like that, and they will now be looking at the loan sharks and going to them for money. That's the only place they will be able to get anything.
So they're actually being driven into the arms of these sharks?
I'd say so, yes.
In Glasgow's shark-infested estates, ordinary decent people caught in the poverty trap are easy prey, especially since April. What used to be grants for furniture, cookers and so on have instead become loans, and people already in debt don't qualify anyway.
I think we've got to look at the basic issue, and it is the level of benefit in a lot of cases. Because the reason people are short of money is quite simple. It's because they don't have enough money. It might be a simplistic approach, but that's the truth. If you have a reasonable level of benefit, a reasonable level of income, where people can have the basics, they can have a roof over their head, they can feed themselves and their children, and they can clothe themselves and their children, you can eradicate illegal money lending.
But at the moment, he says, that's unlikely to happen.
I desperately needed money to get the children's shoes. There was nobody else I could borrow the money from, so I had to go to Mick Brown to get it. Nobody else to turn to. I went to social work to see if they would help me. They says they used to help with things like that, but that was all stopped. So there was nobody else I could go to. They borrowed a £15, and then I had to go back. And then it started off with 30, and then 40. And still, at the end of that week, when I was paying the 52 back, I was still left short. I just couldn't pay the debt, because I just didn't have the money. Because the money I was getting back off Mick was just enough to feed me and the beans. I knew I was in a trap.
That trap was set by Mick Brown. He operated from Craigielee Drive in Paisley.
And I usually went out first thing in the morning. There was about 6, 7 people at a time waiting just to get in and see Mick in the kitchen. And then there was lots of people after that, going up and doing all morning.
These pictures of Brown's stream of customers were taken by the Consumer Protection Department. They counted at least 30 people going in and out each morning between 9 and 12 when Brown was open for business, doling out loans and raking in the interest. He was successfully prosecuted, but seems to think he was providing a service rather than exploiting people living in the poorest of conditions.
I don't create these people's conditions, so to speak. These people are living in these conditions. I'm not creating them.
But you are profiting out of them, or were?
Well, I was profiting out of them.
What sort of profits are we talking about?
£900,000 a week.
Pure profit?
Pure profit.
Brown was running a sophisticated business. As it grew, despite regular hikes in interest rates, he abandoned his handwritten ledgers and bought himself a home computer to keep track of money lent and interest owed.
How much demand was there for your services?
Very low. That's when my rates were 20% of the time outside the demand. They just couldn't meet the demand.
Did you actually want to get the money back, or would you have been happy just with the interest keep rolling in?
I'd be happy just with interest over then. Well, as I say, it just bloomed and bloomed to became to be a Frankenstein. It's a question of I just have our interest. I don't think I could answer that question. I don't.
You say it turned into a Frankenstein?
I just get too big.
Pensioner George Corbett was amongst Brown's hundreds of customers. His case shows how Brown operated on the streets and how he kept customers on the hook by retaining their benefit books.
He'd drive up his car to the post office, and I would meet him there. He handed over the book through the window. I collected the book, went into the post office to cash the money. I got the money and come back out and handed over the money to him, and then he drove away. That was that transaction finished.
Prior to his arrest, Brown was recorded leaving the house from which he operated. The reason he's holding himself so awkwardly is that he's hiding nearly 70 benefit books up his jumper. His clients collected their books from him, cashed them at the local post office, and returned to pay the interest owed before once again handing over their books to him. Those books were Brown's guarantee that his customers would keep coming back.
So you were able just to scrape enough to pay back at the end of the week?
That's correct. And once you paid back, you were left in a lurch. And at finished up, you may have to even go to bins. That's true.
You mean you were so desperate you went through dustbins?
Yes, that's true. Through dustbins and to find anything that's there, or anything that's even clothing or even food. Gets to the stage it's food. That's how hard it gets.
Are you sorry you were arrested?
I never,
Because it was a good business?
No, it wasn't really good. It would have been a good business eventually. It would have been a good business, as I say. If it had went on undetected, the profits would have been enormous.
One big operator who has so far not been arrested is David Aitken, who works mostly from this pub in Thornley Bank. The reason he's escaped prosecution might well be that no one would testify against him. Tony knows Aitken well.
One of the most vicious loan sharks is David Aitken. He's got hard men working for him out of a large number of pubs. He only lends to people who are just able to afford the weekly interest on a loan. So he runs credit checks in reverse. He doesn't want to know people who can pay off the loan.
This is the man himself, David Aitken, Lord of the Thornley Arms.
There's a lot of violence involved when Aitken's looking for his money. But there's never any witnesses. No matter what he does, there just isn't any witnesses.
How did you know that Aitken was the man to go to?
It was common knowledge in the area.
You mean anybody who wanted money?
Well, you knew where to go, and if you didn't, you were told.
Aitken, now back in his favourite corner of the bar, is about to do a deal.
I can afford that.
Can you afford it now? Aye, because I wouldn't give you for that you can afford it. Can you not cut it some?
40.
Okay, that's if you want, but...
I can afford that, honest.
Are you sure now? I don't want to end up rumbling and having to come with you, mate.
No.
Right, okay, I'll give you. If you have problems, let me know right away. Let's go to the toilet.
Walter borrowed £50 from Aitken. Spiralling interest meant he could never pay it back, so he fled to the safety of the south coast.
So how much, including interest now, do you owe him after these few months?
215, 230.
And no chance of paying it back?
No chance at all.
You're looking fairly nervous. Are you frightened of these people?
Uh-huh, yeah, very.
What do you think might happen if they catch up to you?
God knows.
What happened to people who didn't pay?
Well, at the moment, I've got just one person I know, and he was stabbed, and that was because he was 2 weeks late with interest. So it was. And there was another one. Through a strain, he ended up hanging himself.
Walter was forced to run away. And ironically, that's exactly what Aitken did when we approached him. That's him disappearing round the corner of his house. He locked himself in and simply refused to come out. By the following evening, he packed his bags and disappeared. Elaine's dealings with a loan shark forced her into prostitution. She was caught shoplifting winter clothes for her children, fined £60, and went to a moneylender to pay the fine. Eventually, she owed him £700, was unable to pay, and her children were threatened.
Honest, it's better being on the streets. You can sleep at night, having a peace of mind. Nobody's come to your door looking for money off you.
And it's fear of the consequences of falling back into the loan shark's jaws, she says, that keeps her on the streets.
It's better to be a prostitute rather than be in the clutches of a moneylender.
Her fear is triggered by the threat of violence, the kind of violence catalogued by one man who's worked with the moneylenders and knows their methods well.
It's the usual run-of-the-mill violence. It's like, you know, a clip round the ear, a belt in the mouth, hit with a hammer, stabbed if necessary, fingers broke, you know, that sort of thing. It all depends on how much you're into them for and whether you've been trying to avoid them. They use violence to let other people know that if they don't pay back, they might get the same.
When a debt isn't paid, in other words, the money isn't paid on demand when it should be paid, the persons who are dealing with the client can turn vicious, they can turn nasty, and clearly not just threaten the person, but the physical violence involved can really be right out of kilter.
My door was kicked in. My wardrobes, my chest of drawers was taken out. That was the first time.
Jean owed just £40.
My door was kicked in again, and my three-piece was taken. All my bathroom racks, the stuff in my toilet, my wainscoting blaster, and spice racks and things like that for the kitchen, meals and ends.
The place was virtually stripped?
It's stripped. They've not even left me with a fire. I was told by a certain source that the moneylender paid somebody to lift the wardrobes out my house. They were taken up to his backyard, and he actually put a match to them himself and burnt them.
So how do you feel about that?
Terrible and terrified.
Why are you terrified?
Because I'm fearing to get back into the house.
Have you been threatened?
I have been threatened. I've been told that he's going to break my legs if he gets me.
Is he in the habit of threatening people?
Uh-huh. Definitely. He's actually broke somebody's 2 legs, broke somebody's nose, and I've been threatened. I'm going to have the problem of diving about, trying to hide, and as I say, I don't know what's going to happen if I had to meet him face to face in the street. Doesn't guarantee that he's not going to do me in, break my legs there and then.
John has reason to be more frightened than most. He's been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul and is now being pursued by 4 loan sharks simultaneously.
I've had 3 or 4 good beatings because I missed payments. Once I was rushed to hospital by ambulance after they got hold of me near my home, pulled me to the ground and just kept kicking me in the body and on the legs and head. I was badly smashed up. Blood was pouring from my nose and my mouth. My face was disfigured and my legs were badly kicked about. Over the years, I reckon I've only borrowed about £150, but I've paid back hundreds in interest. At the moment, I owe about £800 or £900, nearly all interest. I'm still frightened to go out in the streets because you never know when you're going to run into them. Once I didn't go out for 6 weeks and got so depressed I attempted suicide by slashing my wrists.
Loan sharks aren't known for their humanity. Here's another one in avaricious operation in Bridgeton Square. But like most of his breed, Charles McCabe actually lives alongside his clients and so holds sway over them. And also like most of his breed, he's at his strongest when confronting the weak and the underprivileged. Mr. McCabe, my name is Roger Cook from Central Television. I'm here to ask you about your illegal money lending activities.
You know what you're talking about.
We have been filming you for some time doing exactly that. In Bridgeton Square and in the hostel. It's illegal, you know. Hold on. Just answer some questions. We've seen you do it. And there he is in the white anorak. His son on the left takes the money. Come on, explain yourself. Explain yourself. Come on. Running away, eh? What a coward. Runs away and leaves his wife to defend him. And while McCabe ran from the camera to the safety of his home, Angela's home is no longer a safe place thanks to the likes of McCabe. She's been forced to flee. One day, she hopes, things will be different.
apologise for the interruption to this Cook Report. Hopefully it didn't spoil your enjoyment of the programme.